Welcome to World News. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has told his French counterpart François Hollande that he's ready to cooperate in the fight against Islamic State in Syria. But differences over the future of the country and its president, Bashar al-Assad, have hampered efforts to bring Russia into a wider alliance aimed at defeating the militant group. The two leaders met in Moscow to discuss united action. But as Sky's John Sparks reports, their body language suggested there were deep divisions beneath the surface.
It all looked a little awkward at first. A handshake, yes, but not much eye contact, not a great deal of warmth. And that seems strange. Both Vladimir Putin and François Hollande said they were determined to build a grand coalition, a fearsome fighting force to defeat the Islamic State.
You know our position. We are ready to make this coalition work. Moreover, we think it is absolutely necessary. In this sense, our positions are aligned.
But could they, would they, make it work? The press were told to go. Neither side have been able to agree on who the enemy is. During its air campaign, Russia made little distinction between ISIS and other rebel groups. And it's the same with the peace. What to do about Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad? The Russians have devoted much treasure and several of their men to keeping him in place. Back in Moscow, both leaders returned. And surprisingly, perhaps, it seemed they'd made some progress. François Hollande saying they now see eye to eye on who the terrorists are.
We agreed we should concentrate our strikes on ISIS and similar groups. Europe is also mobilizing its forces at the moment to pursue this aim.
We will be exchanging information about which territories are occupied by healthy opposition, and we will be avoiding doing airstrikes on these areas. We will share intelligence when we are absolutely sure that particular territories are occupied by terrorists.
So, both sides agree on who to target, on how to fight this war, but they can't agree on the peace. Putin said Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad and his army have got to stay.
Fighting terrorists in Syria is impossible without land operations. There is no force that can fight IS and other groups apart from the Syrian army. That's why I think that Assad's army and Assad himself are natural partners in fighting terrorism.
The construction of this coalition won't be easy. President Putin said information shared with the Americans led to the loss of their fighter on Tuesday. The US had passed it on to the Turks, he said.
Look, we warned the Americans where our pilots would be flying, and the Turks are in the American coalition. They knew where our planes would be. That's how our plane got hit.
With Hollande as its spokesman, the West seems ready to put Syria's future on hold. The priority, working with Russia to rid the world of ISIS. John Sparks, Sky News, Moscow.
Britain's Prime Minister says it would be morally unacceptable to leave the burden of dismantling Islamic State to other countries. David Cameron told the House of Commons the UK was at a risk of a terrorist attack and urged MPs to back British airstrikes in Syria. Our political editor, Faisal Islam, reports.
Obviously what happened in Turkey, as I said yesterday...
War and peace with Jeremy Corbyn. A furious internal Labour Party row after a day facing pleas of persuasion from a Prime Minister in search of a clear Commons majority for extending military action.
I'm in no doubt that it is in our national interest for action to be taken to stop them. And stopping them means taking action in Syria because it is Raqqa that is their headquarters.
Working his way through a 7-point plan, the PM argued that the action was legal to defend Iraq, that allies needed RAF military kit, and that Syrian rebels could be the ground force supporting UK airstrikes.
As the report I'm publishing today shows, we believe there are around 70,000 Syrian opposition fighters, principally the Free Syrian Army, who do not belong to extremist groups and with whom we can coordinate attacks on ISIL.
Isn't the logic of an intensified air campaign mission creep and Western boots on the ground?
Polite scepticism from the Labour leader in the Commons, but the real response came later in the day. Sky News understands that when Mr Corbyn told his shadow cabinet this afternoon that he'd vote against airstrikes, only 4 members explicitly backed him, but a majority indicated some support for more military action. Then a shock to MPs, all unexpectedly sent an email from their leader as he took the train out of London. In it, he said, the Prime Minister did not set out a coherent strategy, coordinated through the UN for the defeat of ISIS. I do not believe the PM's current proposal for airstrikes in Syria will protect our security, and therefore I cannot support it. Mr Corbyn's shadow cabinet ally, Diane Abbott, sent a warning to her colleagues.
You can't have the shadow cabinet voting the leader down. The leader appoints the shadow cabinet, not the other way around.
So the only way through this is a free vote, surely?
This is something we've got to decide on Monday.
It's all kicked off in the Labour Party, the latent tensions between the Labour leadership and the Parliamentary Party exploding over the issue of war.
We're going to play our full part as the United Kingdom in trying to prevent that threat and to make life more difficult for ISIL-Daesh on the ground in Syria as well as Iraq. Now, I've got to wait until we have a chance to see the motion, but I do think it's important that we act to protect the British people.
It is an ongoing battle of the people in this room that will have consequences for the vote on military action, Mr Corbyn's leadership and the Labour Party itself. There are Conservative sceptics too over who will fight IS on the ground, the Syria decision again weighing heavy on both main parties. Faisal Islam, Sky News.
That his government should have done more to prevent the atrocity. Sky's Enda Brady reports.
2 weeks on from the terror attacks, and Paris is paying an official tribute to the 130 people who lost their lives. Up to 1,000 family members have been invited for the memorial service. French President Francois Hollande has called on Parisians to display the tricolour from their windows with pride.
It's important that we demonstrate unity, show solidarity and our respect to the unfortunate victims. We have to go on, not have fear, and live normally.
Shocked or not, it's really not the issue. The issue is where is this going to lead? And that's why governments have to take a stand and do something about it just to stop it.
I'm not scared. I'll keep going out.
La vie continue.
Yes, life goes on.
Security across the city remains tight, especially as dozens of world leaders will arrive on Sunday for a global climate change conference. The past 2 weeks have been extremely difficult for this city and its people, and while Paris now remembers its dead, some of the victims' families are urging a boycott, demanding to know how terrorists were able to strike here twice in the space of 10 months. Emma Prevost lost her brother Francois Xavier in the attacks. She's urging people to boycott the memorial, writing in a widely shared Facebook post, "So no thank you, Mr. President, politicians, your tribute we do not want. You were partly responsible for what happened to us. It's earlier that there was a need to act. The attacks in January should have been sufficient." At least 2 members of the terror cell responsible are still on the run. The manhunt for Salah Abdeslam and Mohamed Abrini continues. There's no doubt France will unite to honour the victims, but more than remembrance, people here want reassurance that such attacks can never happen again. Enda Brady, Sky News, Paris.
Belgium has lowered the security threat level in Brussels from serious and imminent to possible and likely, bringing it in line with the rest of the country. The capital has been on maximum alert for nearly a week as police searched for a suspected gunman involved in the Paris attacks. Salah Abdeslam is still on the run. Police in Berlin have arrested 2 people suspected of planning a terrorist attack. They also searched an Islamic cultural centre in the west of the German capital and a car used by the 2 men, but didn't find any explosives. Security services in Mali have arrested 2 people suspected of having links to an assault on a hotel in the capital Bamako. 20 people died when gunmen held 170 people hostage at the Radisson Blu a week ago. The suspects were identified from information found on one of the attackers' mobile phones. Donald Trump has been fiercely criticised for mocking a disabled reporter at a campaign rally. The Republican presidential hopeful gave an impersonation of New York Times journalist Sergei Kovalevsky, who suffers from a congenital joint condition. The newspaper has described Trump's actions as outrageous. David Blevins has more from Washington.
Well, there's almost a gaffe a day from Donald Trump. If he isn't criticising French gun control laws in the wake of the attacks in Paris, he's suggesting there should be a database of Muslims here in the United States, or in this case, claiming thousands of Muslims celebrated on the streets of New Jersey when the Twin Towers fell on 9/11. In making that claim, he cited Sergei Kovaleski, a reporter at the New York Times, but the reporter had already distanced himself from the claims, effectively leaving Donald Trump accused of gross exaggeration. He didn't just criticise the man verbally, but appeared to mock him physically. He has limited control of his limbs because of a disability. It's a very short clip. We know that some viewers may find it offensive, but we've chosen to show it because this is a man who has aspirations to be the President of the United States.
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Oh, maybe that's what I said. This is 14 years ago. They didn't do a retraction.
It's Thanksgiving here, so he's got off the hook to some extent in terms of response. There has been a statement from the New York Times criticising him. He hit back by tweeting that they should concentrate on their falling circulation. But don't presume for a moment that this is going to damage Donald Trump. They're calling him Teflon Don here. Nothing appears to stick. He's still 10 percentage points clear of his nearest Republican rival, Ben Carson. This shoot-from-the-hip playground bully kind of politics appears to be resonating with a significant number of Americans, and he's already gone much further than most skeptics predicted in the race for the White House.
Lord Coe has resigned from his role as a paid ambassador for the sportswear company Nike, but denied it conflicted with his position as head of World Athletics. He's been under growing pressure to leave the post since the publication of an email suggesting he lobbied on Nike's behalf. Our sports correspondent Paul Kelso reports.
Sebastian Coe staked his considerable reputation on cleaning up the crisis in athletics. But less than 3 months into the job, questions about his own conduct have forced him to give up a £100,000 a year role with Nike.
The current noise level around this ambassadorial role is not good for the IAAF and it is not good for Nike. And frankly, it is a distraction.
Coe's 37-year relationship with the company has been scrutinised since he became World Athletics president in August. Its sponsorship of proven drugs cheat Justin Gatlin and its position as one of the world's biggest sportswear companies left many asking if it was appropriate. But Coe only severed ties after it emerged he'd discussed a bid from Nike's hometown Eugene for the World Championships with a senior executive from the company. Speaking after a meeting with IAAF councillors in Monaco, he also said he would step down as chairman of the British Olympic Association next summer. But he denies any wrongdoing and insists there has never been a conflict of interests.
It's clear that reality and perception were getting badly tangled here. And I think from everything I've said today, both in the Council and in the press conference this evening, our focus here is entirely on steadying the ship.
Coe has endured a turbulent start to his leadership. But one of Britain's greatest athletes, herself sponsored by Nike, says it is time he was paid for a role that is currently unsalaried.
I think we need to look about changing things so the person in charge is a proper paid CEO in a fully paid position, and then there can't be any conflicts of interest and there can't be needs to earn your living and to support your family outside of that. And if we don't have that in place, then I think it's very hard to say, oh, you've no right to go out and earn money to support your family.
Lord Coe insists he was not forced into severing his ties with Nike, but the reality is he was coming under intolerable pressure. He'll hope that he can now focus on the big issues that have left his sport facing a crisis of credibility.
The issues could hardly be more grave. Athletics is reeling from the revelation of state-sponsored doping in Russia and criminal corruption charges against Coe's predecessor Lamine Diack. Coe says he's the man to sort it out. His sport will hope he can now just do it. Paul Kelso, Sky News, Monaco.